Happy Saturday, everybody. We're back here again for another episode of the Lions Grid. It's a Saturday, which means, Joe, it's time for our NFL Pick'em episode. So we'll go ahead here and we'll run through all of the various games on tap for this Sunday and Monday. Of course, we already made one pick, Joe, and both of us coming out on the right side of that. So both going with the Vikings. They did sneak out that win there against Washington. Washington was in that game and certainly looked like they had a chance until Case Keenum went down with that, I believe it was a concussion he left the game with. But certainly I think it was a much closer game than people were expecting there between Washington and the Vikings to kick off Week 8 here, Joe.
Yeah, Hoskins came in and he threw one pass that was a really good one, and then he played a few more downs, then he ended up throwing an interception, and it's like, oh my gosh, here they are, they just now getting back into the football game. They have a chance to go down the field and tie up the football game, and everybody's always wondering, when are they going to put in the rookie quarterback that played so well, and then they did all the stats on him on how often he's played. Said he only really played at Ohio State, his senior season, played a few minimal roles his junior season, but that's really all they have to work with. And then he comes in and is drafted, and then he gets thrown into the midst of, the middle of the NFL season and has big turnovers. So, I don't expect it to be too damaging for his career. I just kind of think that had he came back and led them to a victory over Minnesota, it would have been a much more hyped scenario for the young quarterback. But overall, it was a pretty good game. I was rooting for Washington, and then when I saw that interception, I was kind of disappointed, but good football game.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting with Washington. It seems like it's been sort of two coaching regimes in a row where the owner, Dan Snyder, made them draft quarterbacks that they didn't necessarily want. With Mike Shanahan, it was drafting Robert Griffin, and now with he's, of course, no longer the coach, but with Jay Gruden forcing him to take Haskins with their first-round pick. Jay Gruden did not seem to be a fan of that, and definitely it doesn't seem like they got him ready to be playing this season. He definitely, to your point, Joe, he hasn't played a whole lot in general, just last year with Ohio State, but it doesn't seem like he's been prepared to step into that starting role for Washington, like we've seen some of these other rookie quarterbacks do around the league. So kind of interesting that now that's sort of two back-to-back coaching regimes there in Washington that have been forced into those QBs they didn't really want, but we'll have to see if they can figure out the right head coach to bring him in to sort of turn things around. Because, yeah, so far what we've seen out of him here in the NFL hasn't looked real good. He's definitely has a few turnovers, and then there's just other times where passes they just don't look good. So we'll have to see if Washington can salvage that moving forward.
See, one quick thing to note, though, before we move on, is that when I watched him play against Michigan last year, he was lighting up the scoreboard. His passes were dead accurate in college football against Michigan. So if he can reach the potential that he had in that big game and he can bring that to the NFL, I think he could be a successful quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I think he has the talent. I think it's just a matter of getting a coach in there that definitely believes in him and can help give him the confidence and help make sure that he's prepared for that role as a starting QB. Because obviously coming on in relief of Case Keenum last night, certainly their intent wasn't for him to be playing in that game. If Case Keenum hadn't gotten hurt, they would have gone with Case all night. So I think it's once they get the right guy in there, hopefully they can identify the right coach to help him out, because to your point, Joe, I think he does have all the talent he needs to be successful. And speaking of being successful, now these records that I'm about to show up, you can already add +1 to that win column because we both did go with the Vikings, separated by 5 games this week. So definitely an opportunity here for one of us to for myself either to keep up the momentum or for you to come surging back here as we kick off week 8.
Oh yeah, it's detrimental last 2 weeks for me. I think I just tied it up, and then last couple of weeks I kind of just went off on a whim and went with who I wanted to go with, and didn't think they were gonna maybe possibly win. Just kind of hopeful. But the record is the record is, and sometimes when you see these guys on Fox or CBS, and you look at their total records, what we have projected here, is pretty good projections in comparison to the professionals who do it week in and week out. I mean, we still have a winning record. I mean, it's still several games above 500. So, I mean, we're not too far off from calling ourselves professional pick'em segments.
Yeah, we're not doing too shabby at all. And I think hopefully here this week, I feel like the games where we're both in sync, I feel like we should do pretty well there this week. So then it'll just come down to these ones here where we differ. And a lot of these games, it could very well be a coin flip. So I think the closest games are those games where we do sort of differ. And then some of the games where it's, I think, a little more evident who the winner should be, we stay pretty much in sync. So it'll be interesting to see how some of these games play out because there are some good matchups here in Week 8. So with that said, we'll go ahead and start with our first matchup here. You have the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Atlanta Falcons. We're both going with the Seahawks in this game, Joe. Matt Ryan has been ruled out of this game, so Matt Schwab will be starting for Atlanta. I think, Joe, a pretty easy game that Seattle should win. If they lose this game, it's actually more concerning for the Seahawks than I think the Falcons losing. I think most people expect the Falcons to lose this game. Backup quarterback, they've struggled on the season. Seahawks are usually up there in people's power rankings. If the Seahawks find a way to lose this game, that would be more alarming than the Falcons dropping another loss here.
Yeah, I don't see the Falcons putting up much of a fight against the Seahawks.
Next up here is one of the games where we differ, Joe. You're going with the LA Chargers, who will be on the road in Chicago. I'm going with the Bears. I like the Bears defense still. Obviously, Joe, one of the things that I think scares people about the Bears is that lack of an offense. Mitchell Trubisky is not having a good season. That Bears offense is really struggling. The Chargers, though, are a team that has kind of underperformed a little bit, I think, here. They have a ton of injuries that have certainly hurt them. So it's not just underperforming. There's been a ton of injuries that have influenced that. But I'm going with the home team Bears in this one. And I think, Joe, this is one of those games where it could be a coin flip. Because I think heading into the season, a lot of people thought these could be playoff-bound teams. But so far here, up until week 8, neither one really looks like they're going to get the job done this season.
Yeah, I still think the Chargers are going to be able to put up more points and play, more of a complete football game. The season kind of got away from them early with, tough losses, close ones, and them being a playoff performer last year. You just think that they're going to get their heads screwed on straight and be able to put together a pretty good football game. And more so than the Bears, I mean, the last week, the Bears played the Saints pretty well. They only lost by a few touchdowns, but still not able to put up the points for the Bears. And I would just think that the Chargers might have a competitive edge in this football game. I'd like to see the Bears win. If they weren't just one game above the Lions, I don't like seeing the Lions in last place. So that's why I'm going with the Chargers in hopes that the Lions win this week and that the Bears lose in order for the Lions to move up in the rankings.
Well, it's good that you mentioned the Lions because our next game is the Detroit Lions. Of course, they'll be hosting the Giants. And Joe, both of us going with the Lions here. I don't think much of a surprise. On paper, I think the Lions should very much be the favorite in this game. The Giants struggled defensively, both against the pass and a little bit there against the run, although the Lions have struggled to run the ball. So I don't expect with Kerryon Johnson being out that all of a sudden Ty Johnson and McKissick are going to suddenly run for 100 yards in a game. They might, because again, the Giants run defense isn't the greatest, but that would be kind of surprising. And yeah, I mean, Matt Stafford in that passing attack for the Lions has been really good. I think it should be a pretty, of course, we'll talk more about it tomorrow when we do our pregame episode, but I think the Lions should be able to come in, defend the den at Ford Field, and get a win against a Giants team that I think is in certainly one of the they have a good outlook on their future, but in terms of their team right now, I think they're definitely one of the bottom teams in the league.
I'm certainly excited to see these young running backs get the play time tomorrow in place of Kerryon Johnson. Kerryon Johnson's performed well, but I'd like to see some of these younger guys and some of these new guys that are playing the running back position, see how they handle the ball for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, certainly. And I think, of course, in a Darrell Bevell offense, he likes to hand the ball off. We have been running the ball quite a bit, but we haven't seen the production in terms of yards per carry. So maybe one of these other two backs, maybe they'll find a way to find some space that Kerryon hasn't been able to find so far this season. Next up, we have an AFC matchup. We have the Jets going down to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. We're both going with the Jaguars in this game. Of course, last week's Joe, Sam Darnold and the Jets. Sam Darnold himself against the Patriots didn't look good. Of course, ESPN aired that comment about him seeing ghosts on the field. That he said it because they had him mic'd up for Monday Night Football. Jacksonville's defense is another defense that can get after people. I think it should be a Jacksonville win. They've played really well with Gardner Minshew as their quarterback. And Leonard Fournette is running the ball very well for them. I just like the Jaguars at home in this one. I think I would definitely be surprised if the Jets pull this out.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. The Jets just haven't played very competitive football this season. Meanwhile, you look at Jacksonville, they're brewing up a good starting quarterback, or at least a competitive one. And they have talent on their team at various positions. They're just better on paper, and the Jets season is kind of a wash. They can scrum up anything to put together to be competitive and get a win. I'd be surprised. It'll be competitive, but just easily choosing the Jaguars in this one.
Yeah, it just feels like they're the team that is closer to having it all together at this point. Next up, we have the Bengals, who I believe, let me double check here before I slander them. They are in fact looking for their first win of the season here as they go to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. And Joe, another game where we're both on the same page. We both like the Rams here to keep the Bengals 0-8 on the season.
Yeah, I wasn't a Rams fan last year. I mean, when they were playing the Patriots, I was rooting for the Rams. Been tough on Jared Goff. And, the more I think about it, I'm starting to become a Rams fan. If they can string together some wins and play good at the quarterback position, it doesn't have to be, offensive production. What I want to see out of the Rams is good physical football. When you think of a Ram, you think of, heavy duty, tough truck, or you think of hard-headed, and putting an immediate stop to something. So, if the Rams can be competitive in the playoffs and, be a productive football team, I wouldn't mind seeing them play very good football down the stretch and into the playoffs. But as far as the Bengals are concerned, I really don't think they're going to be very competitive. Their key players are injured, and they just don't have anything really going on this season, which is tough because some of these football teams you look at and you're like, there's the ones that are competing for playoffs, and then there's the ones that just really have no shot. Then there's the ones with good records, and you're just wondering, how long until they fall off their productive course. And with the Bengals, you really can't see a game this season where you would expect them to win.
Yeah, the Bengals certainly have just been struggling. Of course, new head coach they're taking over after the Marvin Lewis's long tenure there with them. So, I think having that new head coach, I think the Bengals certainly would be interested in getting a win just because you're trying to build some momentum to carry on into next season. Clearly, this season I think hasn't gone the way they were hoping. So. Definitely they've struggled here so far through the first 7 weeks of the season, and I don't see it getting any better here in week 8. Even though, as Jeff points out, Andy Dalton is the red rifle. I'm not sure if that's an endorsement, Jeff, for the Bengals getting this win against the Rams, or if you're just musing over Mr. Andy Dalton there. But yeah, I think it should be a pretty easy game for the Rams to win. And if they lose this game, certainly will be concerning because, they have not only are they competing with the Seahawks as they typically do these last couple of years, the 49ers are also right there this season as well. So very important for the Rams to get a win in a game that they should be the favorites in. Next up, we have the Tennessee Titans hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Joe, both you and me going with the Titans in this game. Of course, Ryan Tannehill now behind center, replacing Marcus Mariota for the Titans. I believe I saw something about Tampa Bay being ready to move on from Jameis Winston in terms of their moving forward with the franchise. I think he'll still be the quarterback for the rest of this season, but they are interested in exploring some other options there. Tennessee's kind of been up and down this season. I believe they're currently sitting at 3-4. Tampa Bay on the other side of things is sitting at 2-4. So just one more win for the Titans on the season. It's really hard to predict what you're going to get out of Tampa Bay because some weeks they come out and they play really well defensively. They run the ball well, and then Jameis Winston doesn't turn the ball over. And then there's other weeks where they just look like garbage. And I don't know what to expect out of Tampa Bay, but I am going to go with the Titans. I feel like they've been more consistent on the season, and they have looked good with Ryan Tannehill at the helm. But that was sort of what led me to going with the Titans in this one, Joe.
Both of these teams, I mean, if you look at it, Tampa Bay is more of the worst team. Tennessee's more of a middle of the pack, but not really, a 500 team just yet. Should be a competitive football game, but when you look at, who they got at quarterback, I'd be more sure to say that the Titans would win if they had Marcus Mariota and they're not Ryan Tannehill. So that might be a big question mark for the Titans. And then you're looking at whether or not they can just come up and play better football than, any given Tampa Bay football performance. So I just have to say, I believe the Titans would win the game. They might win a close game saying that.
Yeah, it could certainly be an ugly game, so it'll be interesting to see who does come out on top of that one. If I had to pick a game where I'm the least confident, it would be that one because I've gone with Tennessee before in previous weeks, and they've let me down. They did get the victory last week against the Chargers, which I think was the first time I've picked them, and they've actually won. So we're starting a brand new streak there, but that's definitely the game where I'm really the most unsure about my pick because I don't know what Tampa Bay team you're going to get, and I'm not really sure. The Titans have been consistent, but they can also play poorly as well, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens there between those two teams. And Jeff, for your question about Dalton or Tannehill, I mean, I would say I'd probably go with Dalton just because the Bengals are probably going to get behind, and then that means they're going to have to throw the ball more frequently, which should, in theory, give Andy Dalton an opportunity to score more fantasy points just because they're going to be throwing the ball more. Of course, they could throw interceptions and things like that, and things could go south, but I think Andy Dalton should be tossing the ball around more, which may give him a chance to score more fantasy football points than Tannehill. But I think either one is an okay start. Obviously, neither of them are top tier QBs, but that's just my 2 cents on that.
Well, while we're on the subject of fantasy football, you may have the lead in the Pick'em segment, but in the Gridiron Fantasy Football League, I'm sitting atop at number 1 spot.
You're currently holding it down. It's okay. I like where I'm at. I'm at third right now. We'll as long as I can stay towards that top half of the league come playoff times, I'll feel pretty good. But hopefully things work out for both of us because I think right now we're in good play. So hopefully neither of us has any big injuries or anything like that throws our teams off because I think right now we should both be making it to the playoffs, which will be nice to see how things play out.
Right.
The next game up, we do have, what was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Number 9. Number 9. Oh, nope. That was one too far. Number 8. We have the Eagles traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills. We're split on this game, Joe. Of course, you're going with the Eagles there. I'm going with the Buffalo Bills. The Eagles, Carson Wentz has played rather well. He's been faced, it's kind of like a story that's going on with Michigan State, where Brian Lewerke has been throwing the ball well, but they lead the college football in drops. The Eagles drop the ball quite a bit, even though Carson Wentz has looked sharp behind center. But I like what I've seen out of Buffalo from their defense, especially. I think the defense is certainly the star of their team, and then Josh Allen in that offense. They don't score a ton of points, but they manage to put up enough points where they get the wins in the games. The Bills, I believe, are take a look here. They're 5-1 on the season. The Eagles, of course, are 3-4 in the NFC East. I like the Bills in this one, Joe, but what sort of persuaded you to go with the Eagles on the road here to get the win?
I just like the Eagles. They're, a symbol of the nation. They're a symbol of, spirit. They're a symbol of, I used to work at the Soaring Eagles, so, the Eagles, and I'm just a big fan of the mascot of the Eagles, Philadelphia, the heart and soul of, some eastern states or whatever. And, I just have to go with Philadelphia, because Buffalo, although they've looked good, they've played good, they've won football games, I still picked, the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl and play the Patriots again, or didn't I? I think I did, or the Chiefs. I think I picked the Chiefs and the Chiefs and the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to have to go with that they're going to win. I don't think they're going to go to the Super Bowl anymore with all these complications they've had, but I still think they'll have a productive football season and get the win against a good Buffalo team.
Yeah, I think obviously I think the Eagles will certainly be motivated. They're currently in second place in the NFC East. They want to definitely get a win here. The Cowboys are on a bye week this week, but they certainly don't want to lose ground to the Cowboys, so they'll certainly be motivated. And I think that could be a really good game between the Eagles and the Bills. So if you are free around 1 o'clock, might be a game you want to tune into because it could be a very good game. The next one, a very horse-themed showdown between the Denver Broncos and the Colts. Of course, it already flashed on screen, but Joe, this is another game where we differ. You're going with the Broncos. I'm going with the Colts. The Colts currently sit in first place down in the AFC South. They really impressed last week when they got that win against Houston. I really like what I've seen out of Jacoby Brissett filling in for Andrew Luck. So the Broncos, they haven't been awful on the season, but they're certainly one of those teams that don't have very many wins. They do still have some talented players. Of course, they just traded Emmanuel Sanders to the 49ers. I forget what his name is. It's not Cody Lattimore because he's now with the Giants. But they now have that freed up a new number one receiver for them. But still, I think the Colts should be able to get this win at home. But what sort of motivated you to go with the Broncos in this one?
I just don't think that Joe Flacco is as bad as this season has shown him to be. I think he's still got something left in the tank. After all, it was him who came back against the Patriots and played good in the Super Bowl against the 49ers, in order for them to win it in the long run. And, he's had elite clutch plays. He's played solid football, and he hasn't turned the ball over in the past when he was with Baltimore. So I'd like to see him be a good, solid, not necessarily high yards, high TDs, just a game manager and not turn the ball over, but be an effective quarterback for the Denver Broncos, like the reason why John Elway brought him in.
Yeah, he certainly, to your point, has put up quite a few yards and had quite a few touchdowns this season. So he's been good from a fantasy football perspective, but it hasn't translated to wins for the Broncos, which is Of course, something I think they wish they'd much prefer the wins over the fantasy production, but it'd be nice to see them sort of put that together and get a win. But I think the Colts got it just because they've shown good things. And for the last of the 1:00 slot games here on Sunday, Joe, I don't know if you saw the news, but he's back. It didn't. But when you sent over your thing and when I made the graphic for it, it hadn't been announced yet. So we were both going with the Saints anyways. But tomorrow, as the Cardinals head down to New Orleans to play the Saints, it will be Drew Brees behind center for the Saints. He's making his return. I definitely think it should be. The Cardinals have sort of turned things around since the beginning of the season. Obviously, after they tied the Lions, they then went on a little bit of a losing streak there, but they're currently sitting on a 3-game winning streak. They're 3-3-1 on the season. So they're not an awful team. It's just the Saints 6-1. I think for both of us, they're towards the top of our power rankings. They're on a 5-game winning streak. Their defense has been playing really, really good. Latavius Murray filled in great for Alvin Kamara last week. Now they're getting Drew Brees back, who not only, I think Teddy Bridgewater did a fabulous job, but I think there's no denying the sort of mastery of the offense that Drew Brees has along with his skill. I think it should be a game where the Saints get the win. It's at home. There's a lot of things in their favor. They're going to have the lift from having their captain Drew Brees back. I'd be surprised if the Cardinals were able to leave the Superdome with a victory.
Yeah, like I said, it was going to be a big test for the Saints to play without their quarterback, who's the face of the franchise. And the Saints did just that. They played good defense. They played good offense. They played team football. So now knowing that they're a good team without Drew Brees, bringing Drew Brees back, is going to put them far and above beyond, the power ranking of, what we thought they were this year. And, if they can continue playing team solid football, have Drew Brees play at his competitive level that we know he's capable of. And no longer is there that question of whether or not Drew Brees is going to be tired at the end of the season after sitting out, the majority of this season thus far. So we'll have to see if these Saints are going to, string together more wins, get the 1 seed, and, go into the Super Bowl and try to claim their second Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think Sean Payton has done a great job with his game plans and getting that team pointed on the right track to get those wins. Obviously, I think most people were just like, if the Saints can get 2 wins while Drew Brees is out, they were thinking that would be a success. The fact they've gone 5-0 without him certainly has been surprising, and I think you're right, Joe. I think the team only gets better having Drew Brees under center, and it's also nice to know that if he does get hurt again at some point, you do have Teddy Bridgewater who can be counted on and depended on to come in there and play. So it's a good time to be a Saints fan. Kicking off our 4:00 games, we have a matchup between the Carolina Panthers and the San Francisco 49ers. We're both going with the 49ers in this game. This game could be a little bit interesting because, of course, the 49ers haven't lost yet. They're sitting at 6-0 on top of the NFC West. The Panthers 4-2 in second place in the NFC South. Both of these teams have been playing well. Kyle Allen will be getting the start for the Panthers, and he is also undefeated as a starter, much like Teddy Bridgewater. But we both like the 49ers. I really like how their defense has been playing. That front seven has been playing very well. They have the 4 first-round picks on their defensive line, and they're able to put pressure on quarterbacks just rushing them and dropping everyone else back into coverage. That makes it very hard to throw the ball. They've been running the ball well. And Jimmy Garoppolo, to your point, Joe, earlier about Joe Flacco needing to be a successful game manager, Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't been turning the ball over, and he's been finding open receivers and doing what he needs to do. So it's not so much that I dislike the Panthers. I think they could certainly get a win here, but I just really like what I've seen out of the 49ers here through the first 7 weeks.
Yeah, the 49ers, they're the they were under the radar, and now they're, better than anybody predicted. They got a solid defense. I almost wanted to go with Carolina in this game because they've been playing what better football. But then I look at who do they have for playmakers for Carolina, and they don't have very many playmakers. I mean, Cam Newton was like the superstar, and when he was quarterback in the last 10 games for them, they haven't played very well, and now they got a new QB who's playing good football. But I just think when you have your complete team that you thought you were going to have going into the season, and the majority of them still playing football for the San Francisco 49ers, that makes you more confident and more productive and a more reliable team with teammates playing their position and, playing football to get the W.
Yeah, and it seems like for Carolina, they've sort of shifted, funneling their offense through Cam Newton since he's been out, through Christian McCaffrey. Everything's going through him for the most part. That's where a lot of their big plays and things are coming from. So if the 49ers can find a way to limit his effectiveness, should be, that's sort of the key to success. If you can keep Christian McCaffrey under wraps, you can certainly beat the Panthers. Yeah, it should be out of the 4:00 games. It's a toss up between this one and the next game. I think these should be some pretty good games. And the next game up, Joe, is the Oakland Raiders, and they'll be traveling to Houston to take on the Texans. This is another game where we're split. You're going with the road team, John Gruden's Raiders. I'm going with the Houston Texans. Of course, my pick to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl this year. I think this could be a pretty good game because I think the Raiders are, even though on the season their record is only, let me pull it up here. They are 3-3 on the season. They did lose last week, but they have played well at times this season. Houston is definitely one of those teams, Joe, again, where you're kind of looking for consistency. Sometimes they do look like a team that could compete for a Super Bowl, and then there's weeks where you're just left scratching your head like, what happened to the team we've seen in other weeks? Like, what is this a different team? What's going on? And so I'm hoping they get back to playing again that sort of elite level football where it looks like they could certainly represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. But it's certainly, I think John Gruden gets his teams ready, prepared, and it's going to be, I think, a pretty good game here in the 4:00 time slot between these two teams.
I'm picking the Raiders because if the Raiders win this game, they're more likely to lose the next game to the Lions. So that's why I'm choosing the Raiders.
I see doing some pregame karma to try and build them up now so they can fall later. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. The last of the 4:00 games, and this one, Joe, I don't think is really a surprise. Of course, the Patriots still undefeated on the season. They'll be hosting the Browns. We're both going with the Patriots. And I think, since, of course, this is pick'em, it's pretty easy. You go with the Patriots. You pick them to win most games. Most games you're going to be right. So could the Browns win? They certainly could. The Patriots' defense, though, has been really good. The Browns' offensive line has been really bad, and it's caused Baker Mayfield to struggle. They're good at running the ball, the Browns are, but they're not very good at giving Baker time to drop back and throw the ball. The Patriots' defense, like I said, has been playing really well. So it could be a long day for Baker Mayfield in that Browns offense. But I think it's a pretty simple thing, like I said, of just pick the Patriots, and most times you'll be right.
Right on.
Taking a look at the Sunday night football game, this is another game where we differ, Joe, and I can probably understand why you went the way you did, just because you couldn't bear to pick the team. I'm going with the Packers. You're going with the Chiefs. Of course, Patrick Mahomes has finally officially been ruled out of this game. They were they really held off on ruling him out. It almost looked like they were considering playing him this week, which would have been crazy coming off that dislocated knee last week if he would have been healthy enough to go here this week. Yeah, I like what I've seen out of the Packers the last couple of weeks. Aaron Rodgers been getting things done. Their defense, outside of that one game where they gave up a ton of rushing yards, they've really played well. So I like the Packers in this one. They're currently, of course, sitting on top of the NFC North, sitting there at 6-1. I'm expecting them to improve to 7-1. But what made you go with the Chiefs in this one, Joe? Was it just couldn't go with the Packers?
Well, I didn't think that Patrick Mahomes was going to be ruled out. I didn't hear anything about his injury or anything, but yeah, I was hoping that Green Bay would lose the football game in order for them to not be so far ahead of Detroit Lions in the division, that the Lions could string together some wins and eventually, catch up throughout the course of the season and then win the final game at home and maybe still have a chance to win the division. I don't think the season's lost for Detroit, but definitely a loss for the Green Bay Packers. One, it hurt the Detroit Lions and their chances for competing for the division.
Yeah, I think everybody in the NFC North would appreciate the Packers dropping a game, because right now they're certainly making it tough on anyone to catch them, especially with them, of course, going 3-0 through the first round robin of NFC North play, certainly applying the pressure to everybody there. And then last but not least, the Monday Night Football game, Joe. Both of us going with the same pick here. Of course, the Dolphins still winless on the season. They'll be traveling to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. We're thinking that it's going to take them another week to get that victory. Both going with the Steelers at home to take care of business against this Dolphins team that hasn't looked very good. They did apply some pressure last week to the Bills. It almost seemed like they were maybe thinking about winning, but the Bills were able to take care of business, and then the final score there ended up being 31-21, so they made the final score definitely have more room in it than it did at times during that game. But I think their Steelers defense has been playing, the last couple of weeks has been playing really good. Obviously, as a fantasy football owner, I would like to see James Conner sort of step things up and see him run the ball a little more effectively for the Steelers. That would be nice for my team. But I think the Steelers are the better team. The Dolphins, obviously, we know what sort of struggles they're having. Traded away some of their best players. They've been going back and forth between Josh Rosen and Ryan Fitzpatrick because neither one of their play has really established them as a starting QB. It should be a pretty easy game for the Steelers to win, right, Joe? It's kind of hard to think that the Steelers, especially being a very proud franchise, let the Dolphins come in there and sneak a win at Heinz Field.
Yeah, with the Browns going 0-16, with the Lions going 0-16, I think if you add the Bengals and Dolphins to the mix, then all of a sudden you got 4 teams in the history of the NFL that's gone 0-16, and it's like, all right, well, at least the Lions were the first team to do it. Therefore, they're the furthest from the teams that actually went 0-16. So, it's like, just like to see more people join that club rather than just having it be the Browns and the Lions, oh, they were great in the 50s, but not anymore. Now they're just 2 teams in the NFL that can't put together wins during the course of a football season. But, yeah, Steelers should get the win. They got talent. They're on the rise. They're raising a young quarterback at the quarterback position. And, Dolphins really have a lot of confusion, a lot of question marks, and they're not consistent. So I don't see the Dolphins being able to pull out a W.
Yeah, it'd be real surprising for them to get the win. So, yeah, that will do it for today's episode. That's all 15 games. As mentioned, the Dallas Cowboys and the Baltimore Ravens are your 2 teams on a bye this week. So they are not in action. That's why we only have 15 games this week. If you did enjoy today's show, please do help the channel grow. Go ahead and drop a like on this video, or if you haven't done so already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. It's the best way you can help support us right now. We're working towards a goal of reaching 100 subscribers to unlock the custom URL for the channel. Making good progress there. But if you haven't done so already, again, it would really help us out if you subscribe to the channel if you like what you see. And then if you want to be kept up to date when all our videos are going live, there's going to be a bell there next to the subscribe button. If you want to go ahead and ring that, it'll alert you tomorrow when we go live with our Lions pregame show. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about this matchup with the New York Giants. Of course, both me and Joe here tonight going with the Lions as our team to win. But we'll talk a little bit more about maybe some matchups to keep an eye on there, as well as go over the latest injury news and things like that for the game that both teams will be releasing. But until then, I'm Kevin Marheine. He is Joseph Wilmot. We will catch you during the next video. Have a good night, everybody. See ya.